But I want to give due credit to our panelists. So we'll go ahead and get started. We've got a couple of announcements and then we'll move forward with the agenda. So my name is Michael Wechter and I am the, founder chair of this organization. It's brand new. I totally made it up, so thanks for coming. We've got about 10 more people that RSVP'd, so we'll see what kind of attendance we get tonight, but I really appreciate you all being here. So San Antonio Liaison League just started not long ago. I think this is our third quarterly meeting. And it was literally founded out of the idea that there's not a professional networking organization specific for people in healthcare. So I'm a member of healthcare networking and professional development organizations and women's and all the other themes, but there wasn't something really specific to what we do. And I felt like there was an opportunity in San Antonio for us to cross-collaborate with each other, share best practices, share resources where it made sense, and really, the tide and the boat and all the things. Rising tide lifts all boats. So I think it will benefit all of us to be a part of this group. So I modeled the concept after a group that is in Austin. It's called Austin Med Reps. And they've been very successful. They have several hundred people that are a member of that group. They've been meeting for quite some time. And it really has become that repository for industry intel and best practices and sharing of information. So I intentionally did not choose the name reps because I feel like for a lot of us in healthcare business development, we're trying to get away from the rep or the vendor or the sales, perception. So I chose to go with Liaison. Nothing against those folks or that industry, but I feel like it's really unique what we do and the service that we provide to physicians and to their patients. So I wanted to differentiate that a little bit. This group is open to all healthcare business development professionals. So if you are a business owner like I am, if you work for a physician practice, if you work with a marketing firm, that all applies. The only folks that we would not include in this group are those device or pharma reps. Strictly because the incentive in that industry is so different. The outreach and the referral strategy is so different. So we really want this group to be as productive as possible. Fee to be a member right now. It's really proof of concept right now. We really want to get the group together, start to have regular meetings, provide educational speakers for you guys, and then we'll see where it morphs as we go ahead. So right now the plan is to have quarterly meetings, and at one of the last quarterly meetings there was a request for a happy hour mixed in there as well. So we will be doing some evening happy hours to provide time for that personal networking and getting away from the professional space a little bit. So tonight I really want to thank Urology of San Antonio and Corey Bass for hosting us. Do you want to say a few words about Urology?
Urology San Antonio they've got 7 locations throughout the city. It's a group of 26 urologists. It's a really good group, young, old, it's wonderful. They have a men's health clinic. We've got our own surgery center, our own cancer center, and they've been around for 30 years. And it's a good group, it's a good organization.
Good. And we really appreciate them hosting us. This is a really beautiful facility. And then I wanted to thank Anne Marie's for the catering. So please think of them if you have need for a caterer for future events. They did a great job. As part of the planning for this group, we have a steering committee that thankfully has come together to provide some leadership on how we form, what our goals are, and how we're going to operate going forward. So we've put together kind of an organizational charter. And our steering committee right now is myself as the chair, Tracy Garrett is in charge of membership, Jennifer Dunn, Sally Guess and Corey are in charge of programs. And then Shankar is helping us with our marketing, thank God. So this is certainly a group effort. We welcome, feedback and suggestions. But I do appreciate you guys being here. Before we get the panel kicked off, does anybody have an announcement that they would like to share in terms of a position that's open, market intel, changes within, medical practice, new practices that are opening in the area, anything like that would be good for the good of the group?
I just want to suggest that you combine the happy hour and the panel discussions.
Noted. Got it. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Shannon. I met a couple of you guys at the July meeting. It was a little bit smaller, so for anybody I did meet, I'm Shannon. I have a marketing agency and I work for several medical and dental clients here in San Antonio, and I'm working right now with a pain clinic that will be opening in Stone Oak in November. It's Dr. Smith, so he's the pain smith. Thank you. I come up with it. I'm just missing credit. So he will be opening in the DeVita building of Sunterra and Stone Oak in November. So he will be accepting patients shortly. His website is painsmith.com. I will have materials for you guys at the next meeting, hopefully. We're still working on those right now, but just keeping in mind any physicians that might need a referral for a pain doctor will be open shortly.
Is he new to San Antonio altogether?
No, he was working for PSA before.
Okay.
He has branched off and started his own practice.
Great. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Was there something back here?
I was gonna say, Genesis Care, who I work for, who is a national company, is hiring a physician relations manager in Destin, Florida, if anybody's interested. I was up there, so.
Maybe not
Not
this
that I
week.
want anybody to leave here, but yeah. No, not now, yeah. They did get touched, thank goodness, but.
And did you guys want to talk about Nexus a little bit?
We can do it this one or the next one. I think the next one's probably a little
Okay,
more appropriate.
yeah.
We can bring materials and everything.
Yeah, fair.
And then for us, for HealthLink, we are going to be opening our 19th outpatient physical therapy clinic
Wow.
out Petrinko and 1604.
Okay.
Early next year.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah. So we work for Lasso Health here in San Antonio. It's a physician-owned company that we've got a website and an app for self-pay patients. They can find anything they need, such as healthcare with the transparent prices and before they ever book. So they don't have to worry about in and out of network or surprise bills, things like that. And we just signed papers last week where we're gonna go from a little mom and pop company to a household name in Q1 of next year. We'll have a huge announcement, so we're very excited about it.
Good. Thank you.
And thanks for doing that. I mean, that's one of my pet peeves. Out of all the out of all the things we do, healthcare seems to be one of those only industries where you have no idea what you're going to be charged.
Yeah. So it's the small fee that we've undertaken.
Small.
Nice. Anybody else? One of my clients is actually hiring. It's a interventional psychology practice, neuropsychology, and they are hiring a neuropsychologist with pediatric training as well as several counselors and therapists. So doctoral level trained psychologists are evidently really hard to come by the way. But if you know of anybody that might have someone open to a position, I do have a client that is hiring for that. Anybody else? Okay. We do have 2 door prizes in the back. If you did not, be sure and drop your business card in the bowl. And do you want to draw those after the meeting? Okay. That way if we have others that come, they can drop in there as well. The other thing that I wanted to mention is, as I mentioned, there is no membership fee right now. However, we do want to keep track of who considers themselves a member and doesn't. We like to encourage that if you can attend as many of the quarterly meetings as possible. So I think Shankar is going to help us better organize that data. So I think we'll be putting a form on our website where you can just go on and enter your information, and that will put you in our database so that we count you as a member. But we receive a lot of referrals. So if you have colleagues or peers that you feel like would benefit from being a part of this organization, you can send us their information or encourage them to sign up as well. That way you'll get the regular emails and you'll get all the updates from the group. We also have a public page on Facebook. So be sure and go on and follow that page and you'll see the event information there as well. Anything that I missed?
It was wonderful.
Oh, excellent. I put $5 underneath the table for that one. So Jen Dunn is going to be our panel moderator and I will let her kick us off. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Okay, we have someone, we have Brian Dooley from Urology San Antonio joining us remotely. Can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, awesome. Thank you so much for being here. So before we get started, I just wanted to tell you a little bit about myself and then talk a little bit about the objectives for tonight. And really informal session. I mean, I want everybody to come away feeling like you gained some form of knowledge. And what we're talking about is social media. And I'm gonna date myself a little bit, but I was with a digital agency here in town and we worked specifically in healthcare. And we would go to hospital CEOs and we talk to them about social media and we'd get this look like, my kids are on Facebook, what are you talking about? Like, you're not gonna be on there, turn off the Facebook. Turn off the Facebook. And fast forward and now social media is a huge part of how practices connect with their patients and build brand awareness and share important information. And so for those CEOs that told me to turn off the Facebook, I hope they're retired by now. So tonight, we really want this to be an opportunity for you to hear from your colleagues about how they use social media to help either their own businesses, but also their clients in the healthcare space. And get an idea of how they have become experts. Because I think being an expert in social media is something that changes all the time, right? There's always new platforms, there's always something new that we're measuring or don't quite understand. And so for tonight, we've got 4 experts, and I crown you all experts for tonight. And then, I hope that you'll come away with from the session feeling like you learned something. So to start out with, and we're going to start with Brian, since he's remote and he represents this fabulous group that we're visiting tonight. Will each of you introduce yourselves, give us a short introduction, and then I'd like you to answer this question. Do you think that there is a social media platform out there that is not suitable for healthcare marketing? So that's the question. So Brian, I'll have you get started.
Thanks, Jen. I'm Brian Dooley. I'm the founder of Independence Digital. We help medical groups get more of the patients that they want through digital marketing and reputation management. And our clients get chief marketing officer level strategy at a fraction of the cost and an execution team that gets it done. And HealthCard is our only focus. We work with a variety of groups all over the US, from urology, gastro, spine and neurosurgery, OBGYN, pediatrics, and more. Previously, I was the director of marketing and customer care for Urology San Antonio before moving to Michigan 5 years ago. And I appreciate the invitation to be with you all tonight. Thanks, Jen, for moderating, and Michael for organizing the group. And as far as a social network that isn't suitable for marketing.
For healthcare marketing.
For healthcare marketing, right. I would say, at least among the obvious answers, I would go with Twitter, probably. I think it's just hard to get the right kinds of attention on Twitter. Twitter's algorithm generally only promotes the most outrageous or provocative content, and that's a hard space for
healthcare,
healthcare organizations to operate in. So that would be my vote, but I think it's just less effective than other options.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Lacey?
Hi, I'm Lacey, and I'm actually a public health nurse. And I got involved on the digital marketing side because also way back when Facebook had a business page it was launching, I was volunteering with the American Heart Association. And they were like, Facebook has this page thing. Does anybody know how to use it? And so I volunteered, and then I just never really left that side. I specialize in content creation and really messaging and technical writing. I think the thing that's hardest is for healthcare industry professionals to find someone in marketing that understands what the client needs to hear and see versus the copy, paste, repeat information that we always put out. So that's probably what makes us a little bit unique. I think that every platform serves a purpose. And it's just what you're willing to do with it. I haven't met a platform that we haven't been able to be successful on, even if it's just to put in the bio. On Twitter, we're not on Twitter, we're on Facebook, find us there. So, we'll make it work.
Awesome, thank you.
Good evening, my name is Shankar. I am originally from Luxembourg, a small country in Europe, and came over at the age of 28. I had a career in law enforcement for 10 years, and in 2011 I came and studied interactive media studies in Ohio. After graduation, I worked as a software developer for a year, then had to move to Chicago where I started freelancing, mostly considering myself a web developer, software developer, and came to San Antonio as quickly as I can, as they say, right? And here I noticed that due to my background in law enforcement, working a lot with people, those soft skills, that translated very well in storytelling where humans are involved. And it slowly grew to an agency where now I'm operating as a CEO and we have 10 employees. Most of my time these days, our time I should say, goes towards helping physicians who operate on free market principles, kind of what Lasso promotes, helping them do marketing and have an online presence. The other aspect, we are very involved in a national organization called the Free Market Medical Association, where we help the ecosystem understand how free market principles could help employers, physicians, individuals, everyone. And finally, the last thing, recently we have jumped on the trend of coaching, where we help smaller practices or individuals who want to be hands-on and do their own content. We help them through that process. I do not think there is a platform that doesn't work for marketing. You really need to understand what is the etiquette of the environment, what is the audience like, and then come up with creative strategies to gain patients there or gain attention.
Great.
Michael Carroll, Strautner Designs. We've been in the market since 2002. Patrick Strautner basically started the company when he was a fetus. He's, I think, 40 now, so he was still in college when he began. We do web, graphic design, as well as inbound marketing. And we have a large cross-section of different types of clients, but the largest group that we work with are medical practices. And that's been our kind of our bread and butter for about 15 years. I've been with him for 8. I'm sure we're going to kind of get the show on the road, so I will depart from my esteemed colleagues up here and say that I can find a way to object to all of the different social media platforms that we use.
Okay. Great. Well,
we're going to
learn more about that. Okay, so I'm just going to ask a series of questions just to sort of prompt, discussion amongst you in terms of your experience and what you've learned and sort of your philosophy. And I think that there's always, a great way to teach people is to tell stories. So if you have a short story you want to share about a client that you worked with or some feedback that you got, please feel free to use that. So I'm going to start with Brian again. And Brian, can you give us a brief overview of how you use social media with your healthcare clients? What are some of the ways that you use social media to reach potential patient audiences and build brand? Oh, we can't hear you.
Oh, he's muted.
They saw the alert as soon as I started talking. So we use social media. Primarily, we use Facebook just because it's currently still the easiest way to target the specific audiences. And we do that primarily through ads and paid marketing in Facebook, because while organic Facebook isn't dead, it's definitely in the ICU. You get a very, very small percentage of your overall fan base, if you will, seeing your organic posts that unless you have a way of automating it, which we do, or we help clients with, so that it's very low friction for both us and the client to push content out organically that's just keeping your brand fresh, top of mind, patient education, kind of evergreen patient education. But if they've got something specific that they're trying to get out to a specific group, paid is still a great, relatively inexpensive way to get that word out. So for example, urology, if you want more BPH patients, we'll use content, we'll create a piece of content on their website that talks about 5 great ways to treat BPH, and then we'll drive that via Facebook paid marketing so that we're targeting men who are over 55, and it's still super cheap. There's been some issues with Facebook, like in terms of Apple's privacy and targeting, and you may have seen that stuff in the news, but really it's still the best and easiest way to target and the least expensive way to target those sorts of groups for those sorts of procedures or for getting those types of patients in the door.
Awesome, thank you. Michael, what have you guys, what do you use, how do you use social media to support your clients when it comes to healthcare marketing?
So it is mostly used, in our case, for brand awareness oftentimes. There'll be a client for another reason. We built their website, we created their logo, we do some printing or whatever, or they become an SEO client of ours and they go, and nobody comes and says, hey, I heard about social media finally. Everybody knows that.
Yeah, they know now.
But they're not doing it, or they thought, you know what, the person at the front desk can handle our social, and they don't post for a month or 2 months or 6 months. And they know that they need to have somebody help them with it. So it's brand awareness. Lately, it's we have one client who is in the middle of a transition. They were purchased, and now every one of their patients is mad at them. So because they're having a hard time returning phone calls. So our entire social media issue right now is responding to angry patient parents.
Yeah, and we're definitely gonna get to that because that's one thing that you're out there.
Right.
People can say whatever they want.
They can. I actually, a funny story that we'll get to later that I want to broach the subject just yet. It's a tease. So, but as far as we're concerned, from our perspective, we do a lot more SEO, and that's a big focus for us. We view it as part of a more comprehensive SEO approach. When we look at everything, and we don't do, as far as Brian is concerned, we don't do anything in the area of paid on Facebook or anywhere else. So all that we do is organic, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, God help us, some Instagram. And what we're concerned with is getting people to the practice website and an action being performed. A phone call, a contact form, an appointment being made. And at the end of the day, when we look at all the analytics for our clients, we see that the organic work that we do generates 60 to 80% of the traffic, and all the social work that we do is around 0.9 to 1.1% of the traffic that we generate.
Interesting.
So while it is the most visible thing that we do, it's also typically my biggest headache, the thing I get in the most trouble for that has the least amount of benefit. But we have to do it because you must have a social presence, because of that customer service aspect, the brand awareness, and the other things that go along.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk a little bit about content. And we have a content creator here, which is fantastic. So in my experience, it has always been the process of generating new content, pushing content out that a lot of my clients have struggled with. They think that, oh sure, we can come up with enough content, and then 3 weeks later, they run out of ideas, there's not a health awareness event to promote, so then they go dark, or they just forget. You get busy and you just forget. So let's talk a little bit about content. Anisi, can you talk a little bit about how you go about creating content for your clients?
Sure. So a lot of times clients feel like their content is like contact, website address, services provided, right? And what they don't realize is the whole point of social proof is to convey a message of why you should be, working with us or services with us, products with us, whatever that means. So for me, the first thing that we do is we take a year out and we look at all the things that are important for you for the next 12 months, and we lay those out on the calendar. And then we try to look at all the things that are gaps or holes that you don't feel are being done well, which is usually some sort of messaging. Like you don't feel like people know that, when you come into our office, we have, extra coffee, or I don't know, whatever those things are. But you would be surprised at how posts like that resonate more than a list of services that you provide. Because if I'm looking for a urologist, I am going to obviously know probably what I'm looking for, but what makes you different from other urologists is what is most important to be created. And then I think people take one thing and they think that that's the whole amount of content. So instead of saying, this is the service that we provide, and then all the questions that go along with that service, that's tons and tons of content. But people want to put everything in one post, and then nobody's reading that or watching the video. And so if you take whatever, is important to you, I'll just use, breast cancer awareness this month, obviously. Obviously, we know that breast health is important, but think about all the different types of information that you can provide about breast health. And so your social proof is, being the subject matter expert, testimonials, and really people working with people and not people working with doctors' offices, clinics, healthcare establishments. They want to know who's going to be at the front desk. They want to know, that's all content. That's all content. Sometimes if I have someone that's struggling with that, I'll force them to walk around with a camera on all day just to show them how much content they can actually create, and they're just missing it. They're not even seeing it. So.
Yeah. We would always coach our clients to think about those frequently asked questions that people would call for. That's just low hanging fruit, right? Make a post for each of those questions. And I really like what you said about, talking about the personal side, about that experience that the customer, the patient is going to have, because I think that, helps to build that warm, fuzzy piece of what we do. Selling healthcare services is not exciting, right? We're not out there peddling something that's super exciting that people get all jazzed about. So, if we can, begin to build a connection there, I think that's important. Shankar, what do you think makes good content? And I'm using air quotes because, clients are like, hey, I want good content.
Yeah.
So what makes, in your mind, what makes good content?
Well, I have a very short answer to that. I think it is a good story in which you can combine emotions with data and create an experience that makes your audience remember.
I like that answer. Okay. Any thoughts from you, Brian, about good content?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that a lot of people miss is when you're trying to make good content, at least in my opinion, and in the opinion of most people, that people want to know what's in it for them. So a lot of people are used to talking about themselves and about their practice and about they're great doctors and everything else, instead of focusing on how you can help the patient, how you can help the patient feel better. And if you make that simple flip, it'll do wonders to the number of people who are actually clicking through to your content. Like if you're an ortho doctor, and I think a lot of people would say, like, we're the #1 knee experts, or we've been serving San Antonio for 25 years. But no one really cares about that. They really care about themselves. So if you had something instead that was like 5 ways to avoid knee pain, or 3 surprising treatments for knee pain, or 5 ways to reduce knee pain, those are the sorts of things that get clicks. Those are the things that get attention on social media. They get shared on social media, and they get people to your website reading about those sorts of things from your practice and from your website. So just by making that simple switch to saying, like, how do we put this in terms of the patient not in terms of us, the practice, will make a big impact on good content versus content that no one clicks on and no one ever reads.
Okay, so you raise a really good point, and here's the pink elephant in the room. The doctors and medical providers that we work with, they usually have an ego, right? They usually have an ego.
What?
I have not experienced that. I've never seen that before.
They are outstanding medical professionals and marketers in their free time. And so in my experience, physicians come to the table with an idea of what social media does and how it should be used.
It needs to be prepared to be peer reviewed.
Yes, it needs to be, they're talking clinical stuff up here, and then they want to tout, all their education and all their training and how many patients they care for. So, Michael, how do you bring them down to?
I berate them in public.
Okay.
No, it's at the initial meeting. You have to have a very candid conversation multiple times because they are slow learners on this. For some reason, they can be very stubborn. I don't know. Doctors stubborn? Anyone? No. But that you go through that conversation quite a bit with. Your peers that you go to conferences with are not our audience. The mom with a child that has the flu that is worried about the 102-degree fever, that's our audience. Depending on the practice, obviously.
Yeah.
It is, so, and occasionally we have to have that, we have to circle back to that conversation and remind them yeah, I get it. You didn't like the meme. But the engagement on the meme was significant because it spoke to what was going on right now.
I just want to add to that too, one of my favorite things, because it always happens as soon as I know that the provider is going to be in the discovery or onboarding, I'm like, ugh. Because I know it's going to have this, huge shift to the provider and all the things the provider does. And so my immediate scapegoat is to say, let's create a provider's corner. And it's this special content that we'll create highlighting you, your expertise, what you know, how you do it. And then we can place it in special, spaces like a LinkedIn group or an association or a platform or something like that. And usually once we do that, they kind of move over because they're like, oh, I have a corner, right? And it's not that, and usually we can use some of that stuff, but it's just creating space for the people that are boots on ground, that are actually going to be taking photos or giving testimonials and stuff like that. And so I immediately start, creating that provider's corner as soon as I know the provider has influence in any decision making. So
There is another issue with good content, and Lady Michael and I had this a few years ago. We have a mutual client, and they were producing too much of it, and they wanted to post it repeatedly, 2 or 3 times a day.
Okay.
And which is way too much. So we had no idea if a post was great and might be worthy of a paid ad. We didn't know because nothing got a chance to actually, see if it was getting any engagement, because by the time it was posted 2 hours later, Michael was sending me another thing. Okay, they want this one out now.
Yeah.
And so they were doing a fantastic job they were an ideal client as far as generating content, which we love and is not indicative of most of our social media clients. But we were posting it too often and weren't actually taking advantage of how good the client generated content.
Frequency versus engagement.
Yes.
So, Shankar, can you tell us a little bit about what is engagement? What does that mean? We throw that term around, but can you give us a definition of what engagement means on social media?
Yeah, I think it is typically referred to as when you have a post, piece of content out there, how often does someone interact with it? There is liking, there's commenting, and there's sharing. And typically you attribute sharing, which gives social proof, the highest value, if you will. A like is easy. A well thought, heartfelt, honest comment is also very valuable, obviously, but creating shareable content is your big win because you multiply your audience.
Ryan, what do you recommend for your clients in terms of the cadence of posts? Having a client that has too much content is extremely unusual, but how do you come to a number of posts per week or month so that it's both manageable, but also continues to feed that funnel? What's your recommendation there?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's an argument that you can never have too much. I mean, you could have too much of the same thing over and over again, but if you're creating 100 new posts a day and they're all unique and they're all great, like that would be great, but that's not feasible. So you need to find that balance. And like I said, for us, we don't see a ton of value in organic. So that's why what we do is we create a bank of different posts. And it'll have maybe 200 to 300 posts of just kind of your general content, evergreen content. And we'll cycle through those with clients. And it'll typically be 2 or 3 a day that those will go out. But again, that's just to keep things top of mind. That's not necessarily to drive specific results. But that's something that we can automate so that it's not all that expensive for the client because there's not we don't see a ton of ROI on organic content. So, and then from ad or paid Facebook terms, we kind of leave it up to Facebook to optimize that. We tell them like, here's the lifetime budget, the lifetime is this month, and spend it how you see wisely given the constraints of the audience size and what we're trying to achieve, whether that's link clicks to the website, whether it's total awareness or whatever that might be. But some people might be seeing those 3 times a day based on the goals that we set through Facebook paid marketing.
Okay. Shankar, you mentioned comments, and I think that is, that gets in a little bit into, in addition to posting and pushing content out, what is the group's responsibility in terms of engaging in a dialogue back and forth? And so, Michael, I want to get to your story about some negative comments, but in your opinion, what should be the average turnaround time for someone to jump in and either thank someone for a nice comment or address a negative comment? I mean, do we have to be sitting at our computers all the time watching? What do you recommend for your customers?
Really, ideally, as quickly as possible, but I would say same day.
Okay. You see any thoughts there?
I think it just depends. I'm trying to think of like with my clients, I have some clients that it is part of their package that someone is on call responding certain hours of the day because of what they do. We also do a lot of automated responses to stuff that we set up through different types of integrations. But I think, for us, we try to always make sure there's a response if it's normal business hours, and normal is not normal anymore. So anything from like 8 to 8. Anything from 8 to 8, we try to have a response within, 4 or 5 hours. And that's a full response if it's a comment. And because we feel like if one person has that comment or question, probably other people have it as well. So the reason for the delay in the answer, and this is obviously for those full service clients, is because if we maybe don't have that response in our bucket, we might have to go pull the link from a website or get the right number or something like that we don't already have because we want to provide a full answer. I'm trying to think of a comment that's come through recently. I think it was just about services, and they were just asking, I can't find these services that were in the post. When I clicked the link, and so it was actually area that was on the website that wasn't very clear, and so we clicked on the link in the website and sent them the exact link. So just making sure that you're thorough in your responses, I think, is important. And then I think you should have a PR component because right now people use social media to contact or complain or whatever.
Let's get into that.
And so I think having a PR bucket of responses is important, or knowing who you're calling if something comes through the loop and you're like, hey, hold on a second, got this come up.
So Michael, what's happening with your angry customers, clients?
Well, you have there's different varieties of social media can be wonderful. Despite my generally negative predisposition towards it. I also have teenage daughters, so that feeds my negative feelings towards social media as well. But you never know what you're going to learn, and it may or may not be relevant to what your practice and your clients are dealing with. Like once a year, I learned that there's a vocal minority that hates pediatric practices and circumcision. And these are not these comments are obnoxious, and these are comments you don't need to engage with.
Okay.
You just hide them and you block them.
Okay.
You don't have to deal with those.
Okay.
On the other hand, when a practice is going through a change in their portal and phone system, and everybody's mad because they haven't gotten a call back on a referral, a prescription, an appointment that they need in 2 weeks, you do have to deal with all of those. And often when that is built up and now you put up a new post, you have a whole new cycle of angry people, and the more you try to fix it, you get this delightful spiral that is going on today that we've been dealing with. So, the more you try to fix it, the worse it gets on social media. Often, the apology creates a bigger problem for you.
Okay.
The only thing that's going to solve that is people actually getting the appointments and, actually being able to get in and see the doctor that they need.
Okay.
Pretty much.
So Brian, can you speak to maybe an experience you've had where a client of yours continues to get a certain theme in terms of the negative comments that they're getting? How do you use that as a teachable moment? And first of all, how do you handle it on the platform? Do you do you hide it or do you respond to it? And then how do you take that back to your client and say, hey, this seems to be, an issue that comes up?
Yeah, so I guess it depends on whether it comes through as a review on Google or something where you can't just remove it, or it comes through as a comment. But I think Michael had made some good points about, if they're relevant in it, or if they're completely irrelevant and they're just saying rude things and you can delete it, just delete it and move on. I think that's great advice. That's what we do. But if it's something like a review and you're actually taking something to heart, or if you got a new EMR and now calls aren't going out right, or everybody's email got messed up, or something, because that definitely happens, and we've had clients where that's happened. So I think most of the time, if it's bubbling through social media, your client probably already knows about it. For us, we provide reports on things, like we provide a monthly report with all the reviews that they got that month.
Okay.
And I know a lot of the doctors are looking that over. They're looking at their comments. They're looking at comments for the other doctors. They kind of know if, there's one provider who's getting a lot of comments, or if there's one theme from the operations side of things. So we try to let the data do the talking if there's a problem. I don't think it's very helpful if we try to jump in and say like, hey, it sounds like your call center is really having some issues. It's probably not going to go well with the client, and they probably already know it. And the comments bear that out. So that's
You're shaking your head. Thank you, Brian. You're shaking your head.
Yeah. If there's a problem, they already know that they have a problem,
Uh-huh.
and they have probably already said, hey, can we do something about this problem that we have that has nothing to do with social media? And so I am very fortunate that what I do is not PR, and I am not really heavy on the analytics, because what I provide is that creation opportunity, and then I turn it over. So the success, the subjective success sits in their hands a lot of the times.
Mm-hmm.
And so they come to me for the creation, but, depending on, what the services are, they manage that ROI, they manage that rebuttal and things like that. But as far as comments go, I think the best thing that you can do is be 100% transparent, even if it's against, stuff like that just come up and everything else. We try really hard to stress the importance of transparency and minimizing things from, going far. De-escalation is always the word that we seem to use. Like, what can you say right now to de-escalate this situation? And sometimes just saying, thank you for sharing your perspective on that.
Acknowledging it.
We really appreciate that we have, a great audience that's paying attention to the work that we're doing. Even if we're like, right? Like, even if we're just like, oh my God.
You don't use the emoji for the eye roll.
And again, and so what happens is there's no fuel for them.
Right.
Because if they post and they notice that their stuff gets deleted, guess what? They're gonna post more, they're gonna post on more posts, they're gonna post on replies to other people's comments. It's just gonna keep escalating. And so we try to de-escalate off the jump. And, if you say something mean to me and I say, thank you for letting me know that, you kind of feel like, You know, like it just kind of makes you pause for a second, as opposed to me going back and seeing that my stuff was deleted, because then I don't feel validated or acknowledged. And then other people are watching, you know, so your clients or your dream clients are watching how you handle that. And I know many people that use different types of services or providers, whatever, solely based on customer service. Just customer service and how you communicate.
Absolutely.
And, you know, some of the biggest, you know, engagement posts have been about no wait time. Not about your service, not about the credentials of your providers, but that customer service aspect of it. And so when your dream client sees that you're respectful and so on in your posts, and you allow people to show up however they are, it makes them feel a certain kind of way, and you'll probably get closer to attracting more of your dream clients.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit about measurement, but Michael, what were you going to say?
Well, I was going to agree with Nisi. I mean, engaging, like a negative review on Google is a great, it can be an opportunity to actually convert somebody and have them go back, change, and become a more dedicated client if you fix whatever it was that they brought to your attention. The comment I was talking about before that we would delete and block, there's no, sometimes there's just crazy.
Yeah, now I'm not opposed to a hide, like a quick hide.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll hide and we try to figure out like, what we can say about this, but yeah.
But at the same time, when you do have when somebody's angry or upset, engaging it can be an opportunity to really convert them to a more dedicated client or patient or whatever if you engage in the right way. And if you're wrong, owning it, even on social media, sometimes that does work. Now, in our situation right now, we're trying to go, like our client wants us to go, hey, you know, and talk to everybody about what's going on. And we're like, great, when are your phones going to be fixed so that you can get appointments for everybody? And now I have my cricket emoji going back and forth at the office because we don't have an answer. So we'd love to fix it on social for you. Help us with an answer.
Shankar, I'm curious, when it comes to ratings and review, we could probably have a whole session on that because you know, there are 101 sites out there that are allowing doctors to build profiles and allow patients to leave comments and stars and all sorts of things. But just curious, Shankar, when you work with your physicians, are you suggesting they pay attention to any specific sites, prioritize any of the ratings and review sites?
Well, we look at the analytics, where does the relevant traffic come from, and then we probably would tell them Google Business or Yelp, whatever it may be. It's probably worth paying attention to.
Okay. Brian, any thoughts on that in terms of how to prioritize all the ratings and review sites? The patients can be leaving
Google's
comments?
the number one by far. I mean, probably 80% of your attention should be on that, and I would say that there's still at least, I would say probably the majority of doctors still aren't watching that. So if we had most of the doctors just looking at Google, we'd be doing pretty good. But after that, it's probably the health grades, maybe vitals after that, maybe WebMD after that. But I mean, Google, it's hard to even come close to the impact and the visibility of those ratings.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
And Yelp is a whole discussion on its own. It's just kind of a nightmare to deal with. So I maybe don't even want to mention it.
Okay, let's not mention the Yelp. All right, so measuring success or failure. I think it means different things to different practices. So I want to talk a little bit about your experiences in how you present analytics, and what are you pointing to when it comes to showing some wins and some not so great wins when it comes to monthly analytics. And Brian, I'll start with you. Talk to me a little bit about how you measure success for your clients.
Sure. So we like to go back to the client. Before we start marketing, we want to know, what is your goal? What does success look like to you if we succeed on marketing? Because in our idea is that marketing should only be used in general to achieve a specific business goal. If it's that new patients, if it's a specific type of patient or a specific service line that you guys are trying to do. So we always want to track the end result that you're after. So if you want more colonoscopies, then let's measure the marketing on the total number of colonoscopies that we did for this month versus last month, or this month versus 12 months ago, or look at recent monthly trends. Because we talked a little bit about engagement, if someone's interacting with your post and someone's clicking through or sharing, none of that matters if your end goal doesn't produce whatever you were trying to achieve. If we get 100,000 likes on a meme and you didn't get any more colonoscopies, we failed as marketers. So it's really important to us to understand what the client wants out of it, and if they want more colonoscopies, then that's what we need to measure to see how effective the marketing is. I mean, at the end of the day, there's different things to make sure that, of course, there's things that are correlated, but ultimately we need to know what you're trying to measure and then measure that ultimate goal.
Shankar, do you work with your clients to try to figure out the ROI? We hear a lot about ROI, return on investment, what am I getting for this? How important is it for your clients to understand the investment they're making in social media versus the business that they've gotten in return?
Yeah. So since by nature of me working with smaller clinics and sometimes individuals, I have actually a hard time sometimes getting them to understand how important it is for them to have that metric. And I have also sometimes a challenge to get them to put in their side of the data so that we can actually calculate, well, what was the conversion rate. Typically, in smaller operations, there is a business development person, if there is one, who wears 15 hats, and the last thing they remember is to write down, where was that call, where did it come from, and let me go to that tool or that spreadsheet and connect the dots.
Okay.
I find that from a human perspective, you, and as a business owner, you see, well, what matters as a metric to this business owner. And again, in my world, very often the physician is also a business owner, very often a new business owner. And you'd be surprised how often what matters to them at the end of the day is not what you thought would matter. So I try to cater to that as well. And but yes, from a marketer's perspective, we all would like to know what source of traffic is the most valuable, where should we dedicate our resources, and also which traffic gets the highest conversion.
Okay. Michael, any thoughts on that in terms of measuring success?
We
And
include social media analytics on our monthly analytics reports, but I don't spend any time reviewing it. The analytics that I focus on are Google Analytics and insights from the Google Business Profile. I find them to be significantly more valuable as far as how the work that we're doing is performing.
Any thoughts from you, Brian, on analytics and return on ROI?
So ROI is kind of a tricky thing, and one of the things that we've been running into more recently is we're up against other agencies who are able to quote unquote show ROI, but they're being really sneaky about it and I think really taking advantage of clients that don't know any better. So say, this is purely hypothetical. In USA, Urology San Antonio isn't engaged in any of this. So let me just say that to start, but let me give you an example of if I'm a marketing agency and you guys are really intent on getting an ROI, how I would do it and show you, but it's actually worse for your brand. So if I'm Urology San Antonio and say I need to have an ROI, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to buy a term like Urology San Antonio as a search term. I'm going to have it go to my webpage, and you're going to pay me for those ads. Then I'm going to set up a call tracking number, and I'm going to prove that the people who click on my ad for Urology San Antonio are getting you, a $200 patient, and you're only paying me $50 to get that patient. So now you're getting a 4x ROI. The problem with that is that Urology San Antonio is going to get that patient anyway if that ad isn't running. So if you search under Urology San Antonio, the website's going to come up, the close to 5-star review on Google My Business is going to show up. But if you see the ad that I put on there first as an agency, then that's basically putting up a toll booth in the way where there doesn't need to be one. And then I can prove to you that I'm getting an ROI for you, but it's actually just costing you more to get the same patient that you already did. So that's one of the biggest changes, that when one of our clients goes from another agency to us who's doing a lot of marketing on Google, like Google pay-per-click advertising, That's one of the biggest things that we see. And we turn all that off, and then their organic traffic goes up, and all of a sudden they're getting more patients and they're not having to spend money for it. They're paying us less. And it's just a real sneaky way that a lot of agencies can show ROI. So you should be careful as a consumer and someone who is trying to do this either on your own or through an agency, that you're not getting caught up or someone isn't taking advantage of like not knowing that that's really what's happening. And we see it way too often.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, that can't be stressed enough. Like what Brian just described is actually punishing the business by taking away their domain authority with Google. Instead of getting the credibility of the search going directly to the site, they're actually losing out on a benefit that they would have received as part of their SEO and good work that would have been done originally.
But a 300% ROI, so it's great, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think.
Be careful what you wish for.
For us, we have this policy, we call it no scale victories, right? Like sometimes when you are succeeding, it does not show up on the scale. There isn't really sometimes a measurement for it. And a lot of times if somebody is really like hell-bent on having analytics, in the analytics that they want, I'm always asking why. Right? So I would ask yourself, if someone's saying, oh, we want analytics, I would say which ones and why, and how is that related to the work that we're going to be doing for you? Because 9 times out of 10, you might get a few, clicks to your website from a social media post, but you will almost always get clicks if you're using email marketing versus social media. So if somebody's like, I need to know what the reach is for my Facebook, why? Why do you need to know that? And what does that have to do? How does that directly correlate with the success of what you're trying to do? Because if they can't answer the why, then we don't need to focus on it. Because most likely the success for them has nothing to do with that analytic. But I think that what happened is years ago when social media first became a thing, we had to prove our value in spaces, right? We had to prove that it was valuable beyond platforms. We had to prove, and so that's why analytics became this default thing of, what are the analytics if I do this? What are the, whatever. And so for us, we say no scale victories. And we also say, we're here to simplify the things that pain you. Like, that's really our focus. And the things that pain you don't always have analytics attached to it. And so I think it's perspective.
It's really, I like that. I like that. I think no, go ahead.
I'm gonna take a shot at our gender too, guys, sorry. Every Sunday, we are beaten over the head during the football season about analytics. So now men have been hearing for about 10 years about how important analytics are, and now we carry that over into business as well, and not every piece of analytics is useful.
Right.
But we have a client who 80% of their Facebook traffic for some reason keeps coming from Pakistan every month. We need to figure that out. We don't need to show them that, but we would like to know why.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So
And
it's in the culture now, the word analytics.
Analytics, yeah.
Paying attention.
But it's also, you speak to a good, what did you say with the no scale victory?
No scale victories.
And in my opinion, I think building brand awareness is one of those. It's very hard to be able to determine, do more people know us? Is our brand thought of more positively unless you really invest in expensive market research? But I think it's reminding the client that, there are those, sort of other wins that are out there.
Yeah, and I would add that there is this theory of the multiple touch points. They say an average conversion has 7 touch points until they convert. And I believe that is true. And it is so incredibly difficult to measure and show that. Maybe in certain circumstances close to impossible.
Yeah.
It would take an incredible amount of technology and also technical savvy, working with tags and pixels and combining everything to show that, so that for the average client that we have, it would not even be economically reasonable to do that. But as marketers, we struggle with that very often, to say, yes, it was word of mouth, or yes, it was your Facebook, but how did they hear about it, where did they go after that to do some research on you, and that is just, I don't think we'll ever solve that, but it's an important part of the conversation of medical.
Ryan, I have a question for you around, it goes a little bit to ROI, but how far out do you evaluate, let's use your colonoscopy example. You've got a lot of, you do your content, you do your ads, maybe I'm not gonna make an appointment for my consultation today, but I make it 3 months later. How far out do you have your clients measure to say, okay, well, what we did in October, we're gonna measure through January, or where do you stop, where do you begin and where do you stop?
I'm not sure that we look at it as beginning and stop, just because in the clients that we work with, I mean, there's always new people turning 45 who need to be, or people who are 48 and didn't know that the age went from 50 to 45. So we're just always running those ads, and we've run enough ads, over the last 3 or 4 years. We know what works, we know what resonates well, we know what we can get click-throughs, so people are reading about colonoscopies. If you live in San Antonio and you're over 45, you've probably seen these ads on your Facebook. It's the 5 colonoscopy mistakes people make. It's the 10 myths about colonoscopies. These are things that people click on, but then they're getting inundated with the message of, man, if I'm 45, I gotta go get this done because it's prevention. It's colon cancer prevention. So we don't necessarily look at a start date and end date versus like if we ran this ad in this date and the person came in here. We're just looking for the overall trends. And we want you to have more colonoscopy patients that you know what to deal with, and that's currently the case with our gastro clients. That's when it goes back to ROI and engagement. Like, we don't care about the engagement score. What we care most about is that you've got all the patients that you want, that have the right insurance, that have that actually show up to their appointment. Those sorts of things. That the actual appointments that are colonoscopies that are getting done is what we look at.
Okay, that's a great answer. I think that's really important to think about. You raised, you said something that kind of jogged a question or an idea that popped into my head, and it had to do with actually breast cancer and colon cancer. So I think it was this week, Katie Couric came out and said she'd had breast cancer, right? So she's touting the importance of mammography, and it's probably timed because of October. But how important do you think it is to capitalize on, let's say Katie did it in July. How important is it if you're working with radiology practice or women's health practice for you to jump on that bandwagon? And Lisa, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, not to that, but some of the work that I do was with mental health organizations, and I have to fight to get them to stop posting about somebody's suicide and the importance of you're promoting tragedy. It's not helpful to the person that is experiencing thoughts of suicide. So I think that's where my agency is slightly different, is because we build our content based on what the journey is for that customer or that client or whatever, and not what it is based on what's coming up. So like October, there's a bunch of mental health awareness things going on. However, you won't see any of my clients in that industry posting about somebody's suicide. You might see them post about a celebrity's, public admission of a mental health diagnosis, but it's followed by information that is useful to that person. Because if something happens to you as a celebrity, I'm so far removed from that the celebrity's picture might have gotten my attention, but now what? Versus posting the suicide hotline, because what will happen is in those moments, I'm gonna look for that on your thing because I saw it on your post. So you can do that with different types of awareness things, but I think you have to be really careful not to jump on, that bandwagon of she posted about it, so let's post about it. That is somebody's trauma. So unless you're going to really create that story that says, here's what she experienced, put a link back to wherever it was that that article came from, but also include, here's resources, here's connection, here's the services that we provide. We have this technology in our office. You know, be specific in that, because the person that's reading that, if I'm newly diagnosed, you know, it's not that I don't care that she's been diagnosed, but I need to know, what do I need to look for? What do I need? And I think that's what's always missing when I see people, you know, piggyback off of posts like that.
Well, throwing it back to you, Brian, I mean, was it Ryan Reynolds that's recently picked up the battle axe in terms of colonoscopies? Is there any value to your clients to jump on the Ryan Reynolds?
So yes and no. That's something that we definitely do capitalize on something, or some people call it news jacking. So if something's in the news, that you can kind of write your opinion on it or write some background on it and publish it. But we certainly don't make it a focus. Like, it's part of the overall marketing effort, but like with Ryan Reynolds getting the colonoscopy, that's probably getting 0.01% of the attention that we're trying to get for colonoscopies that month. The other 99% is running the ads that we know convert.
Okay.
And like, for example, you brought up breast cancer. You can mention that it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and you can change your logo to pink and put something on, Facebook about it being Breast Cancer Awareness Month. But a post or an article that's something more like 5 inspiring stories of San Antonio women who beat breast cancer. That's a great story, and then if you promote that on social media, you do paid ads behind it, but that works 12 months out of the year.
Right.
For those clients. It's not just around breast cancer awareness. So I think great content stands on its own all the time, but also you can be topical, you can share some stories along the way, but don't expect those to be like your primary reasons why people are coming to your practice, because it's going to be the other 12 months out of the year
Right.
that you need to be thinking about those patients and thinking about the good content that we talked about earlier.
Let's dive back into good content, because Shankar, I know you use video all the time in promoting your own business. So I'd like to get each of the panelists' opinion just in terms of, in your experience, what is generating engagement or click-through rates or click-to-call in terms of, is it a post? Is it a testimonial? Is it a video? Is it a carousel? What have you found to be that magic formula? Because I think we're all kind of struggling with, do I invest in expensive video? Do I go out and take pictures, to be interesting and eye-catching? So talk to us a little bit, and I'll start with you, Michael, in terms of, what's good content look like? What is it made of?
Well, so for our company specifically, we're the plumber with a leaky faucet. We're terrible about posting anything on our own behalf. I can't tell you the last thing we did ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to things that we see with the most engagement for the practices we work with, it's somebody's birthday. It's a picture of somebody with a birthday cake is something, and when I say that, it's something personal.
Yeah.
That makes, that helps everybody relate to the people that they are going to see when they go to an appointment.
Okay, I like
It's
that.
often what gets the most response.
Shankar?
Yeah, I agree with that personal, again, keeping in mind that we work with smaller practices or individuals, and when you can bring in the doctor's personality, have them tell a story that brings in maybe a certain degree of their personal life to whatever extent they are comfortable, brings that into the story, shows empathy, shows some fun. We see a lot of good reactions to that, and with all mediums, video, picture posts, sometimes long form, like almost letters. We focus a lot on LinkedIn lately, like small letters to the public, really from the doctor to the public. We see those things work very, very well.
That's interesting. Nancy, any thoughts?
I think you got to know your audience and know how to speak to your audience per platform.
Yep.
I like to see a mixture, because you can always persuade from one platform to another, cross promote. I think it's important, again, like you said, to be really personal and people do business with people. They don't do business with a practice. And so a lot of times we get hung up on the practice. And so you talk about the accolades of that practice, but go dig deeper, you know. I love, you know, emotional connection and data is always a win. Sharing people behind the scenes. People want to know what it's like, you know, to be back there. I have a lab group. Their post, we shifted from all kinds of stuff to the thing that they do the most of is funny stories about lab draws. Like we had this one client that came in, and you know, they tell little stories about clients that come in to do lab draws and the things that have happened, obviously with the client's permission. But people love that stuff.
Yeah, that's neat. Shankar?
I'd like to give an example. We worked with a physician in Cuero, Texas. The woman used to be a hospitalist for years and decides she's done with it, and she, with her husband, literally built their own clinic on their ranch. And there's this video where she her husband was putting up the road sign at the crossroad, and she's joking with him, and he's saying something along the line of, yeah, I need to make sure I do that right, otherwise, you know, I'll hear it from you, or something along those lines. And that post was so immensely successful, the entire community of Cuero rallied around this physician, and the Victoria newspaper came and wanted to run a story. So she hadn't even opened her doors yet, and this is a membership-based clinic. She had 30 paid members for a very small community before the doors opened.
Great story.
So things like that, I understand that is not something you can necessarily do with a larger client, but from our perspective, things like that really, really work well.
Brian, what about you or your practice in terms of your business and working with practices? Are you recommending video? Are you recommending long form posts? What are some of the newer things that, not new because it's not new, but what are some of the more frequently used types of recommendations you're giving?
Yeah, I think a lot of the same things that everybody just mentioned, that the stuff that's more topical, because if we're working with a practice in Mississippi, we can't do the on the ground stuff. We can't do the happy birthdays. We can't do Dr. So-and-so's 30th year in practice post, because we're not there. We don't have him and his staff all around. So those sorts of things do well, but a lot of practices, they're just busy seeing patients and they want someone else to deal with their social media. So some of the things that we do, just to mix it up a little bit on social media, and one of the things that gets a fair amount of attention is repurposing reviews, great reviews, 5-star reviews, into social media posts. We'll actually create an image with the text of the review, and then have 5 stars on it, and say, here's another 5-star review for Dr. Jones, and share that. Those get a lot more engagement than we thought that they would, because then other people chime in and say, oh, I love Dr. Jones, and so you've got that social proof aspect that Nisi mentioned earlier. And it also is someone else that's talking great about your practice. It's not you bragging about your practice. So it kind of brings in some of that more engagement, but ultimately it's hard if you're 1,000 miles away and your client doesn't send you more than 1 or 2 emails a month to do super engaging, get to know you type content. It's just, there's only so much you can do.
Well, we could go on and on and on. I want to make sure we open it up for questions from our audience here. So we've talked a lot about, what engagement is and how to measure success, what's good content. What questions do you have when it comes to using social media, whether it's how to manage certain situations, how to just post, how frequently you should post, or if you have any situations that you kind of want to bounce off the experts? I wanted to open it up to the floor. Yes, Michael?
or your quick draw. Shankar, you touched on it a little bit, but can you talk about, and I think we have a basic understanding of the difference in demographics between Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you know. As that is evolving, there seems to be a lot of focus right now, a lot of drive towards LinkedIn. Can y'all talk about the different platforms, and are some really destined for obsolescence, or are they all relevant depending on who your customer is?
Great question. We'll let you all answer that. So Shankar, you can start.
Yeah, I have fallen in love with the LinkedIn platform because for my type of position, they typically have a lot of individuals that they like to have as members. What's really driving revenue for them is if they can acquire an employer in the community and have 10, 15 lives at once, or even more, sometimes 500, 600. And LinkedIn obviously is a platform where most people on there have the disposable income to make business decisions. Most people are in a position where they can make business decisions, and less than 4% post every day because they have a little bit more of a respect for that platform as to not post what you could post on a different platform. And it's just been very instrumental in, I call it humanizing the brand, where you have an opportunity to really talk about the physician and let him tell stories that maybe gain the attention of local employers or other influencers. One of the questions that you had prepared for us was to share a success story, and the activity on LinkedIn from one of our physicians got him to testify in the Texas House of Representatives as to how free market medicine could impact access to affordable, valuable healthcare. And that is something amazing that I believe can only happen on that platform by truly letting the physician show his passion and engagement, and also his history in what he has been working on his life support.
It's a great story. Michael, I know you don't like any platforms, but what's your prediction in terms of maybe obsolescence or
Fine.
evolution of platforms?
I like LinkedIn, and I read something not that long ago that LinkedIn also has the most dedicated user base that also spends the least amount of time on it. So the average LinkedIn user uses it the most often, but for like 10 minutes a day, if that. Facebook is a disaster at the moment. If you've used Facebook,
talk a little bit more about what that means.
So I'd be happy to. The desktop version of Facebook, if you have logged onto it in the past 3 to 6 months, they continue to improve it, and it continues to get worse. It's impossible to find. I love the memories feature just for personal use. I like seeing what I was thinking 10 years ago, so I can be embarrassed at what an idiot I was 10 years ago. But they continue to move, change, update, and it as time goes on, it's clear that it appears to be at least a company without direction that doesn't know what its product is anymore. And as that's happening, they're losing users, they're getting rid of employees, and so on. So there's so much competition in the marketplace at this point that, I mean, it's still enormous and it's not really going anywhere, but I think it's significantly less important than it has been. We're still going to have to pay attention to it and use it and put paid ads on it the way Brian does. Brian is in no danger of losing a revenue stream as far as Facebook is concerned. At the same time, I think it will become less and less important, and we'll be talking about it less and less. I think LinkedIn has done the best job of kind of updating as the marketplace has evolved over the past 5 to 10 years, certainly. We're going to have to learn TikTok, though.
We'll get to that. I have a question about TikTok. Nisi, what do you think?
I think that they're all as relevant as you want them to be. And it's not about whether you like it or not, it's about, is your audience on that platform?
Yeah.
And so if you put, I'm not a fan of the updates. In fact, I don't even use regular Facebook anymore. I'm always in the business suit because I can't stand the way it looks anymore. And but the pediatricians that I have as clients, Facebook groups are their bread and butter for conversion, because all it takes is one mom saying, "What provider do you use?" And then all the moms in the group start posting who they use. And the great thing about groups is, if you come across a post from 6 months ago and you post up, it pops it back up towards the top. So I think it is whatever you want it to be. I use TikTok for offices that are a little bit more laid back and are more interested in engaging in person. And then I use LinkedIn for offices that are a little bit more conservative, and they're more interested in accolades and status and things like that. So I think it is whatever you decide it's going to be. Whatever you are on, use the features that they're promoting. So if you're on Instagram, use the Reels. If you're, you know what I mean? Use whatever feature they're promoting, because they're going to push you out even more. So,
Brian, what are your thoughts on the evolution of our platforms?
Sure. So I heard that you have an upcoming question about TikTok, so I won't go too far in depth with it, but the rise of TikTok has caused these other platforms to come out with things like Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, YouTube Shorts, that are all basically TikTok clones on their own platforms. And one of the things that, if you don't know, the biggest difference between TikTok and the rest of those is where Facebook, you're seeing what your friends and who you follow are, but TikTok serves you up things that they think that you're interested in. So that's where we're starting to see this blend where, and LinkedIn has also changed their algorithm so that you can get more organic reach based on interest rather than who you follow and who you're connected to, which is what it used to be. So that's why I think a lot of people are now more bullish on LinkedIn, because it's generally a higher socioeconomic status person who's on there. There are better customers, better patients, better B2B opportunities on LinkedIn. And you're starting to get more of that organic reach that you didn't have before, because it used to just be the 400 people that you're connected to. Now it could be 4 million if your post is good enough and LinkedIn serves it up enough, which is similar to TikTok, where you could have 1 or 2 videos and you could have it go viral and have over 1 million views on it. Where if you do that on YouTube right now, you could put 2 YouTube videos up, your chances of getting millions of views are slim to none, first out of bat. So that's kind of the difference, that TikTok, the rise of TikTok, the meteoric rise of TikTok is driving these changes in both algorithms and the types of products that the other social media companies are providing.
Is it important to pay attention to what audiences each platform is speaking to? Brian, you said you raised a good point about the type of person that's on LinkedIn. Are you working through that with your clients? Do you talk a little bit about aligning with their patient audience and where you'll find those people?
Yeah, I think so, but it's normally excluding things like Instagram if you're a urology practice where you're trying to get patients who are 50, 60 plus, and Instagram probably isn't where it's at. Interestingly enough, TikTok is aging up really quick.
Okay, let me ask my question.
Sure.
So how do you create credibility for something like a medical provider or a medical procedure on TikTok? And this, to me, TikTok is just a lot of silliness, right? I mean, I get sucked into it. So I'll start with you, Brian. How do you have any credibility and go to the market with an important clinical message?
Sure. So first of all, it's hard for an agency to do it on your behalf.
Interesting.
So that's the biggest thing. An agency can help, support it, where especially if they were more local and they brought a camera over and you shot 10 videos and then they chopped that up into 50 smaller sound bites and then they edited it for TikTok and then they posted it to TikTok for you and then they managed your engagement. So there's ways that agencies can make it easier on clients, but ultimately it's really got to be the expert talking. So I talked to a urologist who was not at Urology San Antonio, if there's anyone still there. This urologist was looking to retire in the next few years and do basically remote practice, a telehealth practice, where they could be on the beach in Florida and see a few patients a day and still make pretty good money and stay involved. And one of the things I talked to him about was getting on TikTok and becoming the men's health expert on TikTok. Talk about 5 ways to improve your testosterone, 5 dangers of taking, strange testosterone pills that you get at the gas station, all these different things. Those are the sorts of content, and that can blow up on TikTok. And there's way more users than people think on TikTok. There's plenty of people in most of the target markets, and it's aging up relatively quickly. I'm not to the point where I'm recommending it for like BPH ads for 50, 60 plus. But if you wanted to be the men's health doc, you could have hundreds of thousands of followers just creating the same content that you talk to patients day in and day out about. But it takes work.
Okay, but you could have 100,000 followers, but how many of those would really be in your patient catchment area? Where do you weigh the difference?
If you're telehealth, and we still have the laws that allow you to go nationwide, or you do private pay.
Yep.
If you've got a big enough audience, you can monetize it if you're a doctor.
Any thoughts from the table, AC?
Yeah, so I am a big fan of TikTok. The primary reason I'm a big fan of TikTok is because it forces you to get out of that kind of stuffy, robotic
I'm a stuffy, robotic person.
And so it just disrupts what you think social media is. And so that's why I like TikTok. I agree with Brian, you could easily go in and be the subject matter expert in whatever your thing is, what you do. And you don't have to be the subject matter expert in all of it. And then you should always tie it to a something. So we have personal trainers that obviously can't go to every place where people are viewing it, but they have supplements that can be sold. So if you're going to be on TikTok, your call to action is going to be something that needs to be attainable for the masses versus not. It does have opportunity to tag your location and stuff like that, and that gets difficult, especially depending on what people are looking at. But I would say be on it and give your practice an opportunity to have fun. Even if all you do is like 10 of them. If you guys think about a while ago, the doctors and the dentists that are dancing, doing the dancing trends and stuff like that, my guess is they probably didn't get a single client from that. Mm-hmm. But what is relevant is the people that are already in that network, when they share it within their own platforms that they're usually on, they felt a connection. It became personal. So it's not so much always about that conversion. Sometimes it's about that disruption that it causes. And the same is true when I have liberal clients that I'm trying to get them to understand the benefit of LinkedIn is to learn how to streamline and talk a certain way to your clients.
Shankar?
Yeah, so I think that skill of telling a story under a minute that TikTok has brought up is really going to be key. And I really agree with what Ryan said about it's very difficult for names to do that, which is what led us to start a Zoom call every morning and basically coach those who want. We basically give a homework of the day, and then there's a few providers, and one of them is there on this sheet, the doctor from Quero. She started doing that. And I think, also about the TikTok audience is very forgiving and they like to have fun. So there's one account that his name is Dr. Glaucom Flecken, and basically what he does, and he has I think 4 or 5 million followers, and what he does is he basically does satire where he plays 2 characters. And it's always about the topic of healthcare and cost of inflation and basically also how doctors are treated by management in hospitals. And so he does that and it's amazing. It always goes viral. And then when you click on his link in the bio, it goes to a simple landing page that sells you a subscription for eye drops. right? And then it says we're cheaper and quicker than CVS or Walgreens. And he has tremendous success with
Can you
that.
say his name one more time, please?
Dr. Glaucom Flecken is his, and with me with a German background, that's how I
You
would
say it
pronounce
very
it.
well.
How, maybe it's
Glockenflecken.
Glaucom, yeah.
Okay.
So it's also a great, that link in bio is a great gateway link to build up your other platforms, or to maybe build up an email newsletter list, or to use automated text marketing, where you can say like text hello to this number, and then you are building your text database.
Michael, LinkedIn? I mean, sorry. TikTok, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not following Dr. Glaucom Flecken. I have nothing to add.
Do we have any other questions from the audience about social? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question about cross-posting. So say we post a TikTok, is it good to post it on Instagram and Facebook? And because I like to reuse content because you can't really get that much out of a doctor in some time.
Okay.
But how beneficial, I know, how beneficial is it to cross-post on all platforms?
Brian, I'm not sure if you heard that, but the question is about cross-posting.
Yeah, I was able to hear it.
Okay.
We don't do a whole lot of it, just because in general, it's probably better to contextualize for the platform as much as you can. I mean, some of the stuff's going to be evergreen, like if we were talking about the breast cancer and the 5 amazing stories of brave San Antonio women. That probably plays pretty well everywhere. I don't know how much engagement something like that gets that's not visual on Instagram. But in general, if it's easy to cross-post, like you're using some sort of software to do it for you, like it's not gonna hurt, but we typically recommend going all in on one platform and really optimizing it for one single platform, and do that one platform really well. Everybody's worried about being on all the different platforms, but they're not good at any one of the platforms anyway. So it'd be better to be really good at one and then maybe kind of use the others as, quote unquote throwaway. But it's way too often people are more concerned about getting the message out to 5 different platforms instead of being really good at a single one. And you could get millions of views if you were really good on any one of the single ones. It's just that normally the problem is that the content isn't good and it's not engaging. Patients don't want to read it, so that's why it's not getting a lot of traction.
Ooh, a little pressure there. Michael, any thoughts on that?
So we have a completely different approach than Brian as far as our social media. We view it just as something to benefit our SEO. So when and where it's possible, we're going to link back to our website with everything that we post. So to us, because we just don't, basically we want to share, but we also just don't want to get in trouble. We're fine with cross-posting as long as it makes sense, and we're going to create a link back to the site as often as possible to drive traffic back to the website. So, but we, again, our approach with social media is, if you're working with Brian, you're not working with us. We have very different, like you're using Brian for a specific reason and you'd be using us for a different reason. So we tackle different segments.
Yeah, and I think that is something that I want you to take from this evening, is that there are all different types of approaches to social media. There's no one right way. And I think it really comes down to your audience and who you want to reach and what your practice is, and what services you have. And you can become an expert too. And I really like what Brian said in terms of own one channel. Don't try to do them all. It's just not, it's impossible unless you have an army of people that are working with you. But Shankar, any thoughts on, cross-posting?
Yeah, so I would definitely like to acknowledge that there are 2 different schools of thoughts. The paid and the organic, as we already know, both work. You very often have, it's kind of rare, based on my experience, to find agencies or professionals who are really good at both. So maybe find something that you can resonate with and then go with that vendor. In the organic space, and a lot of those new providers that have grown up seeing influencers conquer the world and who want to become a doctor influencer, there is a term called multi-channel presence, omni-channel presence. and they very much aim to create their content once, and then I'm gonna give away a secret here. There's a platform called Content Fries, like fries you eat, okay? Contentfries.com. You upload your video once, and then the platform takes care of rendering it on all the different formats that your respective channel prefers.
Look at that
And
little
it
nugget.
does
Look at that little
transcription and everything. And your young influencer physician who has grown up looking up to influencers will be interested in doing that.
Okay.
Because they think data is the new currency, and they want to capture as many leads themselves without agencies, and they're going to be interested in cross-platform presence.
We have just a few minutes before I want to hand it over to Michael. Are there any other questions?
I guess I have one.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's a little convoluted, so bear with me. Okay, so I work in transplant, and I took notes, so I'll be looking down. And I often find like the sole endpoint is like the Google ad for digital conversion. And so, you know, I spend a lot of my time explaining to them kind of like the consumer journey for building authority, whether it's from awareness to them going to social media for research, you know, up until that conversion, since Google ad is pretty much the only thing that converts, as I'm saying. So I guess I would wonder what you guys say to kind of set those expectations to the physicians and your clinicians on what the timeline looks like for those conversions digitally, and then how you guys define ROI, if that makes sense.
Anybody want to take that on? Brian, did you hear that okay?
I heard everything except the type of service that they're providing at the beginning.
Transplant.
Of what type?
So, like.
Hair, organ?
No, yeah, organ transplant. So, organ transplant, we're doing like CRM campaigns to where they have Google ads that will lead them to a landing page, and the digital conversions we look at or that I explain are typically like a fill form or a phone call, but they're thinking, well, is it a transplant though? And I'm like, it's digital, it's not like the people that you're pulling in, obviously they're gonna be searching keywords like kidney transplant, or end-stage renal disease, but it's not that they're coming in and they will be a guaranteed physical transplant. So I guess I wonder, what you guys' methodology is when you're talking to your clinicians and your physicians as far as like setting those expectations for a digital conversion versus, okay, this person is fully qualified in all aspects to have a transplant or whatever informal specialty you guys work with. Urology?
Yeah, we have just a few minutes. Brian or Nisi or Shankar?
I'll take a quick stab and just say that it's not easy to market those sorts of services because it's such a small group that needs those services. And as much as I don't like Google AdWords just from their expense, just overall expense, it might make sense for that sort of, really narrowed down. But I think a lot of that is more of the referral and like the group that's in there, the liaisons, the relationships, the getting to know the urologist or Dr. Harmon down the hallway from where you are who does kidney transplants every week. Those are the sorts of probably relationships that are going to be far more effective than social media marketing,
Right.
Because you're trying to find the needle in the haystack for those sorts of problems.
Well, and I do both funnels, so they're just talking, I guess, as far as like, you're already doing the provider relations, right? So on the marketing end, how are we bringing that in, as far as that conversion? And so I have to explain both. So that's why I was like, I don't know, how you guys typically set those expectations for the clinicians.
Nisi, did you have a thought?
Yeah, so my first thought is, why?
I know, right?
And what part of what we're doing isn't working? It's kind of like the commercial for toilet tissue. Like, do we need a commercial for toilet tissue? Probably not, right? I don't know anybody that saw toilet tissue on a commercial and was like, I need to get that.
I like those bears.
Right, but we know it for brand recognition. That's why the commercials are there. There's no way for them to track people seeing is it Charmin? Charmin?
I can't remember.
Charmin the Bear toilet tissue to the people that are purchasing it, 2 weeks later, well, maybe 2 months later, because they have so much of it, but right? So there's no way to really do that. What I would do is I would flip it and I would say, where can we expect the highest type of conversion? Let's spend our energy here. You get 100% battery pack in digital marketing. And if you use up 50% in a space that you can't create clear analytics or client journey in, why spend your time there, right? So I probably would have flipped it, and I probably would have said, let's spend time creating really good email campaigns. Let's spend time creating really good partnership opportunities on LinkedIn. Like who's gonna be telling people to come to us? Let's work on those things, because that's where you're gonna get those people. If I'm searching for a kidney transplant, I'm most likely just looking for information. So you could create a place for them to land for information, build brand awareness, be the subject matter expert, those things. Not necessarily gonna be who I convert to, because I'm just looking really for information, but my conversion will probably lie, especially something so specific, in my relationships and referrals. So how do I build that up? Because I got 100% in my battery. If I spend 50 of it dancing around on TikTok, then what, you know what I mean? How can I really create what it is that you're looking for? And referrals are much higher conversion than any money that you spend on social media.
Well, I know we can go on and on.
Transition. No, Ryan and DC, you guys both reinforced exactly what we all do for a living, so thank you very much. I mean, truly, it speaks to, and we always advocate with our clients, that it's not just one tactic that's gonna move the whole strategy forward. So you have to look at the digital space, you have to look at marketing, but you also have to look at your referral strategy. You've gotta be getting out to your referring physicians and creating those relationships, because that piece is not gonna happen in the digital world, right? Consumer engagement is really important. So I think the goal is how you put all of that together to create one big strategy. But I really appreciate y'all saying that none of this takes the place of that liaison, right? That was not planned, by the way.
You can pick up your check at the door.
Yeah, that was not.
You better grab her card.
There you go. So if you guys have more questions, certainly you're welcome to stay and hang out.